happy to
The
chat as
host
long
has
as you.
started broadcasting the meeting on Facebook.
I don't know why Mac just started doing that. Did you hear that?
I definitely heard him.
It's
Yes.
it's starting to do the thing on Facebook. So let's see if it actually does because it said it was doing it and then it gave me a warning that it wasn't. So I'm just gonna check and see.
Oh, yeah, good idea.
Make sure
Okay.
that we're actually in there. And if we're not, then I'm gonna push record anyway so that
Okay.
I have a copy of our talk, but
Yep.
it's just nice
If anybody is watching, hello, just in case.
just in case. And there could be because I did have immediately a handful of people be like, yes, we definitely need to hear about that.
Good
Yeah, see,
stuff.
it told me we're not live, but I can see us there.
Fantastic.
So
Awesome. Good. It's a good
there we
start.
go. Okay, so technical issues aside, we don't
Oh,
have to
yeah,
worry about
yeah,
any of
honestly.
that. Everything's fine. Take a deep breath. I'm gonna hit record.
Yep.
Okay. The recording is in progress. Okay. So this is Naomi, and we have only known each other for, I don't know, a few months,
Six
maybe.
months? Yeah, a little
Yeah.
while. Yep.
But it's funny because I feel like I know you really well.
We just keep on crossing, which is really nice.
Yeah. And maybe it's the type of subject matter that we're talking about because it
Hmm.
is so,
Intimate.
private and
Yep.
intimate.
Yep.
And also, I wanted to tell you, you remind me of my best friend from junior high school. He
Ah.
had that same kind of, curly hair and
Yeah,
beautiful
yep.
smile and just kind of
Yep.
bubbly personality and always, she and I got along really well because I always just want to have a good time too, right? So if
Hmm.
we can get to having a good time, let's do that.
Right on. I like
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. So that could be partially why I feel so
Yeah.
comfortable. And then you just ran a workshop on confidence
And
and
sexual confidence, yeah.
that.
Hmm.
And one of the things that struck me really strongly was you said, even in our professional lives, how confident we are is going to, come across like it does transmute to other areas of
Yeah.
our lives, which made me think about like what I hear a lot from women in the
Mm.
group is that things got challenging in some way or
Mm.
painful
Mm.
and they went to the doctor and they were told, well, that happens sometimes. And they tried a couple over-the-counter products and they weren't successful and they had pain. And so they just gave up on having intimate relations. And then it impacts their relationship, which makes sense. But I was surprised that, and I can see how, because isn't it kind of like you shutting down
Mm.
part of yourself
Yeah.
and kind of giving up?
And the thing that really strikes me, even just listening to you, Jessica, is like if you think about being a woman, so first of all, you're told your periods are going to be awful. Just heads up, you're going to be in agony for the rest of your life, and too bad you're kind of stuck with them. And
Yeah.
if that doesn't happen, it's like woohoo, I get the get out of jail free card. But if you do have the horrendously painful ones, then you go and get some medical help. There's not really any help to give you except take some painkillers if
Yeah.
you're lucky they work. And then we've got all of these medical conditions that come along with these incredible bodies of ours. We have the painful sex, we have the endometriosis, we have the hormonal problems, we have the autoimmune conditions, we have so much can go, and then we have the STIs, the sexually transmitted infections, and we have the yeast infections or the thrush, and then we have the fear of the pregnancies. And there's so much that happens to us with these female bodies of ours. And then we hit perimenopause and menopause, and we go and we're like, oh, things are happening. I'm not totally down with these changes. And so we go and look for some help. And it's just like, once again, there's not enough help. There's not enough information. There's not enough education. And there's not enough professionals out there taking us seriously. And so I'm like, totally, of course, sexual confidence and confidence in our bodies translates out into like our professional lives and our relational lives and like all of the rest of it. But on the other hand, of course, it impacts us so strongly when things are out of balance in that way, because it's kind of like we're never really given the support that we need anyway to be like fully in these bodies and fully lit up and turned on and in our sexual power. And the world doesn't want that from women because it's apparently scary when women are really, in our full power. And so we're just left to deal so often. Luckily, there's groups like yours and other, and practitioners who are starting to wake up a little, but we're just left so much of the time. And we just shut down because what other options do we have?
Yeah, and I find it really sad because, like, for example, in the last couple of weeks, I was talking with a lady and she said, went to the doctor, got checked out, tried a few products, pain was still there,
Hmm.
talked to the husband, decided to just give up on that part of their
Yep.
marital
Yep.
relationship. And I said, well, have you ever heard of pelvic floor physio?
No.
No, never heard of it. And I was like, this is a lady who went to the doctor. She did the right
Hmm.
thing. We've had
Yep.
some pain. And they never mentioned that.
No.
Um, I was like, it's treatable. This is treatable.
Yeah.
She was like, it's impacting my relationship. Well, of course it's impacting your relationship. And,
Yep.
I mean, how could it not? Because it does, there is the physical part of having a relationship, where you have that your needs are being met physically.
Hmm.
But there's also a whole bunch of other stuff that happens when you're close to your partner, like feeling safe and feeling cared for and connecting on an emotional level. And,
Yep.
it's kind of like, um, it can be like a glue that keeps you connecting with your partner. And if you just suddenly take that away,
Yep.
and I feel really sorry for everybody in that boat because it's totally unnecessary for her to give up on having intimacy. And it's totally horrible place for the husband to be because what's he supposed to say?
Yeah.
Oh, it's
And the other
painful.
thing
Let's
that
do it anyway.
it's a really common story, like with my clients. So, for those of you who are watching, I don't know if everybody knows I work with women who have sexual pain, intimate pain, numbness, issues with orgasm, like the whole gamut. When it comes to our genitals and sex, I'm kind of the go-to for that. And, one thing that's really common is, so for example, with this example of this woman that you're communicating with, and they've agreed, luckily her husband is supportive, and they've agreed that that part of their lives is apparently over. As women, we're not even really taught that we're allowed to even want to or enjoy sex. So as a woman going through perimenopause or menopause, if you, like, as a woman, if you say to anybody other than other women in the same position, well, that means my sex life is over, the understanding from the world out there is, well, of course it is. You're a 50-year-old woman. Like, obviously your sex life is over. Your poor husband, like, how sad for him that he now has this, like, his loss. But nobody actually wants to accept that as a woman we would even want to have sex, or that sex or genital intimacy is important for us as well. And so there's like this dismissal of us as women. There's like, I'm also a perimenopausal woman and I can feel it happening. There is this dismissal of the older woman as a sexual woman, as a woman who also wants physical intimacy and physical pleasure. And I think that's one of the reasons also that it's not kind of not taken seriously enough, because poor guy, but oh well, she's old, so what does it matter?
And also it could be science. Like, so you are a naturopath, which means that you're good at math and science. And
Yeah.
at some point you decided to go in the medical direction, but
Hmm.
you decided to go more along the lines of a holistic practice and
Yeah.
not so much a medical doctor. But you
Hmm.
still are doctoring because that's your
Yeah.
background.
Hmm.
When I was doing my degree, I did a minor in anthropology, which is the study of man.
Oh,
And
okay.
I did a class in medical anthropology. So we looked
Hmm.
at medical systems and medicine and how, pandemics are handled and
Interesting.
women's health
Hmm.
was definitely in there. And so from an anthropological perspective, everything that we do is done for procreating. And
Hmm.
I think with that mentality, when you're going through perimenopause and menopause, obviously you're not going to be producing babies. So
Oh,
then therefore it's no longer
that's it.
part of your life,
Yeah.
which is, I think really short-sighted and very uh patriarchal, right? Frankly, right? It's one of the things that we learned about was, even the study of sperm and the ovum,
Mm-hmm.
the description of that process is very patriarchal, right?
Mm-hmm.
The sperm all come down and it's a little army and only
Yeah.
one of them survives and is
Yeah.
the winner.
The strongest survives. Yeah.
Mhm. But when they really examined what was
Yeah.
happening, the ovum says, you know what? Henry, Henry's the one. It's the
She
ovum.
chooses. She chooses.
Yeah.
How cool is that?
We have a misunderstanding of the power of our body and how we can relate to other people and what the function, the
Yeah.
social function, like, so this woman that I was talking to said, the husband agreed and everything was fine, but then it
Mhm.
started to impact their relationship because,
Oh,
I say that the sexual drive is a drive. And again, from anthropology, there's a debate. Is it actually a need? Because we as a species need to procreate,
mm-hmm.
but as an individual, we don't need to procreate.
Mm.
Like we need to eat and we need to sleep. These are real needs. But look at relationships that leave out that kind of connection, especially if it's been established as like, you got married and you had your kids. And so you've obviously had this as part of your whole life. So not only are you letting go of this idea of who you were, I
Mm-hmm.
was, I was a beautiful young woman,
Mm-hmm.
and now I am nothing
Mm.
because there is no narrative unless you embrace
Yeah.
being a grandmother, maybe,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But 45-year-old women are not embracing
No.
being a grandmother.
No, thank you very much. Not yet.
No.
No.
Later, maybe, if
Mm-hmm.
we're lucky, but that's not going to define who we are. We're not going to suddenly become Mrs. Claus. We're Santa's wife and
Mm-hmm.
baking cookies, and that's the rest of our lives. So it's like a multiple loss upon loss upon loss.
And Jessica, I'm going to take it one step further because the way that I look at it, and I totally hear you on the philosophical. I've got the wrong word.
Anthropological perspective,
Anthropological. The
all about
anthropological
procreation.
perspective in terms of procreation, and absolutely, yes. And the one step further of that is to say, okay, so we're built to procreate. On some level, that's absolutely true. And our bodies contain sexual energy and a sexual current and a sexual life force that is actually the life force of life, because that is the current in our bodies that has the potential to create life. So, what happens when we hit menopause and then we're no longer driven by this desire to create life, as in a physical, another human being? That sexual energy doesn't turn off. That life force, that creation energy doesn't leave us. If anything, it gets stronger. And so now, if we actually stop and take a step back and look at the world, we have generations of women that are no longer being driven by the thought of having children, but are still filled with creation energy and with sexual energy and with life energy that could now be channeled into something that would genuinely change the world or change their own experience of the world. And instead, we're told we're turned off and we have nothing left. So don't even worry about it. But what if we actually all just took a step back and went, I'm still filled with sexual energy and it's mine. It's nobody else's. It's mine. No one can take it away from me. I'm still filled with life force energy. It's still running through my body. My body has more of a capacity for pleasure now. As a woman, as you get older, your capacity for pleasure, for orgasm, for sexuality, for physical intimacy, it just grows and grows and grows and grows. Nobody tells us this. Everybody says you're old, everything's shut down. It's the exact opposite. The older we get as women, the more potentially powerful we are. But because that's not encouraged and it's not allowed and it's not even spoken about, it's not, it's like this hidden diamond that's just waiting to be unleashed on the world in the best possible ways, or at the very least, unleashed in our own lives so that we
Mhm.
can claim that for ourselves and take a stand for that. And it comes back to what we said at the beginning of this call about the confidence, because that's the truth of the confidence is the ownership of, I am a woman, I'm getting older, and I am filled with life energy that can go in any direction that I now choose for it to go. And if I choose for it to go in nurturing the intimacy of my relationship with my partner, then amazing. If I choose for it to grow into some kind of project that's going to change the world, amazing. If I choose to take a stand in the workplace and say, no, I am here. Look at me. I'm not going anywhere just because I'm getting older. Come on. That's what we can choose. But we actually, like for all of us, it's so countercultural. It's
Mhm.
counter to society. It's counter to everything that we're told about ourselves. That I'm sure there's some women who are listening and going, "What the fuck is she talking? Oh, sorry, what is she talking about?" Um, because it's so not what we're taught and what we're allowed to have in these bodies. But that's who we are, and they
Yeah.
can't take that away from us. But we have to take a stand for it now, because nobody's going to give that to us.
No, no
Nobody's
one's
going
going
to
to give
turn
you that.
around. Nobody's going to give it. No one's going to turn around to a group of middle-aged women and say, have all of your power. Do what you want in this world now. We will listen to you. We will respect you. We will go in the directions that you choose. Like it's never going to happen. And so for us to really go, you know what? This is me. The direction that I choose is the most epic orgasms I've ever experienced in my life because I'm choosing to be a sexual older woman. Awesome. Go
Yeah.
for it. Or whatever the choice is. But genitals and sexuality in a middle-aged to older woman doesn't have to mean dryness, doesn't have to mean pain, doesn't have to mean shutdown, no sex, no intimacy. Like it doesn't have to mean any of those things, except we're told that it does. And so part of us believes that. And we need to start rewriting that. And I take a really fierce stand for rewriting that as I get older, especially. I am not going to go down that path and agree that that's my lived reality. No.
No, it's completely the reason why I wanted to talk with you about this is that I just see it as another loss that's completely unnecessary,
Absolutely.
right? I mean, the first questions that I'll have for a gal who's talking about this, if she's married
Yeah.
to a dude,
Yeah.
like is he pretty cool? Like, are you having a good time with him? Like,
Yeah.
do you still
Yeah.
enjoy being married to your partner?
Yeah.
And if she says yes, then I say, it is worth it to keep in there. Like get in there, keep trying, keep experimenting, talk to other women, see what's worked for them, go and find a pelvic floor physio
Yeah.
and talk to them about what your options are and what kind of things might help. Like, because the treatment can be really effective
Yeah.
and quite fast, actually.
Yeah.
Like once you find what the situation is, and so much what I hear is women are doing Kegels and Kegels and Kegels, and it's actually making things worse. And then
Giggles make things worse, ladies, most of the time. Just a
yeah,
heads up.
they talk to
Yep.
a professional who says, actually, you're too tight. Your
Yeah.
muscles are too tight, and you're
Yeah.
having kind of like internal muscle spasms, and we have
Yeah.
to relax those muscles.
Yeah.
And I really feel like we have to get the word out
Yeah.
to women that don't just put up with that.
No.
That's another pile of bull,
Yeah.
right? You're getting handed a pile of crap.
Yeah.
And I think that in Canada, like we're really good at taking care of moms and
Yeah.
babies.
Uh,
Right? So if you're pregnant, they watch you and they're very careful and they're monitoring everything and they're really with you on everything that's going on and they'll really help you with the baby once the baby's born and the
yeah.
breastfeeding and make sure that the postpartum is okay and lots of just check-ins and monitoring and making sure the baby's all right until they get to that 1 year mark and then it's like they kind of go, okay, well, now you got a kid, not a baby. So we don't really care anymore. That's how it feels to me. It feels to
Yeah.
me like when I went to the doctor at 47 and was like, I'm really starting to struggle now with these issues. I have very good doctors, by the way. Like
Mhm.
incredibly blessed in that manner. But it was still like disappointing that the medical take on it, the standard medical take on it was like, well, this is just part of what happens,
Yeah. Yep.
and you'll have to put up with it and figure out a way through it. And, you know, for me, I was just like, that's just not good enough.
No,
It's just not good
it's
enough.
not. It's not
There's
good
got
enough.
to be more options.
Yeah. And
So
another
what
thing,
would you say for a lady who like, lady
yeah,
comes to you and says, you know, that same kind of situation, 47, she maybe doesn't even know she's in perimenopause, but
yeah,
they've slapped in an IUD for your bleeding,
they
which
do that.
ladies, they are treating your perimenopause symptoms. When they slap in that IUD because you're bleeding too much, they are treating you with progesterone.
Mm,
That is a treatment for perimenopause. They just don't tell you that.
yeah,
They just
yeah,
skip telling you that. They don't inform you about what's
yeah.
going on with your body, which makes me really mad. You can probably tell.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so she comes to you and she says, you know, I've never had this before, but now I'm having pain. And she may not even be aware that dryness is an issue because that can happen too, right? Where the symptoms
Mm-hmm.
don't always, it's not always like, then you have dryness and then you have pain and then you have,
No.
you know, it can
Yeah.
happen however it happens. Like I had perfect blood work and
Mm-hmm.
regular cycles and chronic UTIs
Yeah.
from
And
dryness.
that's a really good point, Jessica, because blood work isn't the be all and end all. Blood work isn't always the thing. And the reason I think that blood work can be useful, but also not useful at all is I think we can be really practical about it and we can say, yeah, hormones are changing, tissues are changing, we're aging, things are different. But we actually need to take a few steps back from that and really have a look at what's happening for a woman at this stage of life. And what's actually one of the things that are happening is as we get to this life stage, as we get to this crossroad experience, which is menopause, when we're going from being the mother, as in not necessarily a mother, but the mothering age into the crone or the elder or the wise woman age, the crossroads of that is it's a reflect on your life and take stock moment. And the way that I like to work with the body and explain to my clients what's going on with their body, whatever their symptoms are, is our bodies are always having a conversation with us. Symptoms are not symptoms, symptoms are messages. The issue is that we don't really know how to listen to our messages because when we're always in our heads, we're not in our bodies. We're never taught to listen. So when the body starts talking at this time of life, it's often got a lot to say because it hasn't had a chance to say it for the last 50, 40 or 50 years. And it's not messing around anymore. It's like, okay, this is it. We're crossroads, baby. We've got them some things to talk about. So if your relationship isn't great, it's going to show up in your body. If you're frustrated and angry and disappointed from the last 20 years for whatever reason, it's going to show up in your body. If you've been pretending to enjoy the sex life you've been having and faking orgasm, it's going to show up in your body. All of those things are going to, if you've been working too hard and you are adrenally depleted because you're trying to force yourself to work in a male kind of oriented workplace that doesn't suit your female body, it's going to show up in your body. If you have been giving and giving and giving and giving, it's going to show up in your body. And so we can take the creams and the tablets and we can like do all of those things and they will help. They may help, possibly will help for some time. But the truth about this life stage is it's an opportunity to actually step into who we want to be and how we want to live our lives. And if we don't want, I mean, it's absolutely fine if we don't want to. And I have to say as well, with everything that I just said, with showing up in your body, there's no shame or blame coming from me. I mean, I'm a modern woman living in this world as well. And we are all just doing the best we can, right? We're
Mhm.
just doing the best we can with what we've learned. And now is also a time for taking a stand for yourself and for reflecting and for choosing for what's going to be coming next. And it's actually those moments of reflection and those moments of choice and those moments of what have I been doing that's been working and not been working? And are there parts of this that I can just let float away? Can I just stop saying yes to everything that's demanded of me and just try on a no? As
Yeah.
terrifying as that is, because it's so uncomfortable and weird feeling, just try
Yeah.
on a no and see what happens. That's actually the start of the healing. That's actually the change that is going to facilitate all of the change of the dryness and the pain. Because honestly, a menopausal woman has the opportunity to be deeply juicy, deeply wet, deeply turned on with healthy tissues and an incredibly high libido, as long as they're willing to take a choice for that and let other things fall away that is draining their life force. And it can be a really hard thing, especially if there's teenagers in the house or, all of that kind of thing as well. Like, I know what I'm saying is not easy. So I would say if a woman comes to me and says, oh, I'm dry and I'm sore and I'm getting thin, and the first thing I'm going to ask is, how's your life? And she's going to go, aren't you giving me estrogen cream for my vagina? And I'll be like, maybe that's what you need. But you've been having sex for the last 20 years and you don't like the sex you're having and you've never liked it. So what's the estrogen cream going to do? Like, let's really get clear on what it is that, no, I'm not saying that about that woman you spoke to either. I'm not making any assumptions. But let's get really clear on what's actually going on in your life and what you actually need in order to thrive. And that's when I help them get brave enough to start setting boundaries and taking control and choosing themselves and saying no and saying yes and saying more, please. And all of those things that we need to do so that we can actually feel like we've got some energy back in the tank and we're not running on fumes and we're not pushing through every day exhausted, but there's something more for us. So that's what I would do. I'm sorry, there's no magic bullet. If you want the magic bullet, you go and get the estrogen cream or you get the IUD with the progesterone or, and you hope and maybe it'll work and maybe it won't. But if you really want transformation and a juicy, because we've got another 50 years, right? If you want a juicy 50 years, there's a little bit more that's needed.
Yeah, and I think that it's from my background, like I remember
Mm-hmm.
my auntie telling me that the last baby that my grandmother had, she hid the pregnancy.
Yeah.
And the neighbors didn't know until she was like, you know, obviously pregnant.
Yeah.
And I remember asking her, that seems so foreign. Like, why would someone want to hide their pregnancy? She was married, they'd already had three, and
Yeah.
then this little,
New
probably
one.
a
Yeah.
perimenopausal baby,
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
shows up. And she said she was deeply ashamed because you shouldn't be having sex with your husband when you're old.
That's it. Proof that you're having sex because you're pregnant at least one time.
What?
Yeah.
I said to her, like, why would that be? And she said, it's got to be something to do with maybe religion
Yeah.
or the societal pressures of what people think you should be doing, or what she was worried about, because she was Baptist. My grandmother was very Baptist, and it was all
Yeah.
about, no drinking, no smoking, no gambling, no cards, no books in the house that had a swear in it.
Oh,
She would be very that grandmother would have a hard time with me because I'm pretty open, obviously, right?
yep.
Um, but I just felt like, oh, that's sad for her. That's sad for the baby that came, because he was welcomed and loved by the family. It's not that, but that legacy kind of, of being a little bit ashamed of him in some way, right? Or ashamed of the pregnancy, and how
Yeah.
unnecessary. Like, what a load of bull, right? She was happily married to her husband, and like, why would it matter? I don't know. Anyway, it made me really think about that as being kind of part of the legacy of what we've inherited in general, in that time, like Christianity, Western culture, Victorian age of
Absolutely.
controlling women and their sexuality. One other thing I wanted to mention is my husband's really into reading about Toltec wisdom, and
Mm.
Carlos Castaneda, who was an anthropologist, by the way, and he got kicked out of school because he went native. Like, that's what they call it.
Oh, awesome. Yep.
He just went into
Yep.
that culture and became absorbed by that culture.
Yep.
But I said, I'm not really into it because it's about dudes going into the forest and doing a lot of drugs, and who's taking care of the children is what I said.
Yeah.
It's pretty selfish. So he said, oh, here's one that's written by one of the ladies in this, culture of the Toltec wisdom. And she had a whole section about aging and how they don't really age in the same way. Like, they're not, obviously, you can't really tell how old they are because they don't look
Mhm.
in mirrors, because mirrors make you old, because you look there and you notice every little change, right?
Mhm.
You criticize yourself and then you reinforce that you're older.
Mm-hmm.
She talked about the secondary function of the uterus. So the first function of the uterus is that you're going to grow a baby and the baby will grow and then you have created offspring. That's the primary function. And then when you go through the transition, you're supposed to start the secondary function of the uterus, which is your creative force. So the uterus is still that powerhouse for creation, which is interesting that you mentioned that about, what is it that you want to do with this part of your life?
Yeah.
And what kind of legacy do you want to leave yourself? We talk about legacy a lot because my dad recently passed away and he was an amazing jazz composer and we salvaged his legacy by creating a bunch of recordings. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but for a woman, they wouldn't necessarily, I mean, we wouldn't necessarily even think about that, right? Like salvaging her legacy, or what is her legacy? Her legacy is the children that she created.
Yep.
And more often, women are choosing to not have children or not have bio children. And
Mm-hmm.
all of our theories have to be kind of toppled over, right? Like, is this actually appropriate to how I'm living now? And do I really want to buy into it? Because it has affected me. Luckily, I'm in a really nice, loving, caring relationship with my friend who was my bass player, and then we fell in love. And so we have that.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about that quite often. How are we able to do this? And a lot of it is because we go back to being creative forces together in the band.
Beautiful.
So we
Yeah.
respect each other as just people, and then we're
Mm-hmm.
also trying to negotiate this relationship. And every time, because weird things will happen, all of a sudden there's a change, and it really has been like that for me. All of a sudden, it's a change. And we just keep talking about, when you want something in your life, that perseverance of not giving up on it, just because there's an obstacle that's presented itself, doesn't mean that you have to just succumb to that and be like, oh, well, blah, blah, blah. Life is over. I'm no longer who I used to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm no longer who I used to be, but like you said, and I've been told this before from other experts in the field, if you don't give up and you keep trying different things and just keep persevering until the transition is over, you do catapult into a completely different, you know, way of being with your partner that's the best of your life.
Mm-hmm. That also
So,
goes through your relationship with your own body. It doesn't have to be with your partner. Absolutely. And
yeah.
that story you shared about your grandmother, I think it's in Swedish and German and Danish, the word for the labia is shame lips. The
Mm.
pudendal nerve has the Latin root of the word shame, like our bodies are shameful, our sexuality is shameful. Our genitals, especially, are shameful as women. We're taught to be ashamed of ourselves anyway, the way we look, the way we smell, the changes that are now happening in menopause, the graying of our pubic hair, the changing of the color of the skin of our labia, like all of those things. We're told that it's shameful, but it doesn't actually mean that it is. And again, it's this thing about taking a stand for ourselves. And I think for a lot of women at middle age, like we're less kind of willing to deal with or just to let the bullshit go, like just to let it float. And we take a bit more of a stand. And so I'm really about taking a stand for this as well, that these bodies are not shameful. And nobody has a right to tell us that they are because it's our bodies, not theirs. And so we can actually develop the best relationship with ourselves, like you said, but we got to keep on sticking in there and choosing it and having it as something that's important for us. Because if it's not important, then it doesn't matter. If genuinely all you want is for your vagina not to hurt because it's dry, awesome. Get yourself some cream, sort it out, or, whatever it is it's going to take. But if it's a genuine desire that you're going to enter the next phase of your life with a body that is ready for the adventure of life and is on board and is on and it like anything's possible in it, again, got to choose it. We've got to keep on choosing it in small ways and big ways and in all the ways. And I think that's also the greatest privilege that we have in this life is to, if we wish to make that choice, is to make that choice and take a stand for that.
Yeah, and I appreciate that you said like it's not like everybody has to be like, okay, now I'm gonna go change the world. And
Sure.
if you wanna, I have one friend who's really like, if you're not a doctor, she does not care. Like she humors me, but she
Yeah.
wants to know from the doctor, right?
Yeah.
Um, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's working for her, and that's
Yeah.
how she feels, that's what her values are. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. That's what she wants to do, and that's what's resonating for her. And so I think it's really important for everyone to realize, just because we're talking about intimacy and, keeping your sex life alive and enjoying yourself and moving into this place of power, that you don't have to do that if you don't want to.
No, of course
You're
not.
not interested in that. But I do encourage everybody to explore the idea of passion and creativity at this point.
Hmm.
So, maybe you don't have a partner, or maybe you're not interested anymore, or whatever it is, and you just want to let it go. But what are you passionate about, right? Like, do you love flowers, or are you really interested in music, or did you really love swimming when you were a kid, or something like that? Like, one of the first ladies I helped was like, I'm overweight, I can't do anything, and I'm tired all the time. And I was like, what about exercise? I'm too tired to exercise. And I was like, what did you like to do when you were 12?
Yep.
Swimming. She loved swimming. And I was like, put on your swimsuit, take your work clothes, go jump in the pool for 20 minutes even. Like, just try
Totally.
it.
Yeah.
And she started doing it, and it was a game changer for her, because she realized, yeah, there's things like you have to remember your stuff, and you have to. So I was like, take a change of clothes and have it in your trunk. So if you forget that day,
Yep.
it's no problem. You can just change. But yeah, for her, did it address all of her issues? No, it didn't solve everything. There were still other problems, but having an exercise routine that she enjoyed,
Yeah.
right? Lowering the stress hormone, not putting herself on a treadmill that she hated, but doing something that brought her back to that sense of joy and fulfillment and passion in her life, really
Absolutely.
helped her to move on into the next stage, and then do that in other areas as well, of finding things that she really enjoys, and continuing to do those things. And but we're the captains of our own boat, and the shape of our lives is going to come from us as the leader of our own lives. And I think
Absolutely.
women have been conditioned, if you're married to a heterosexual, like normative kind of situation, to let him be
Hmm.
leading.
Hmm.
But I find, especially with the perimenopause stuff, he has no idea. He has no
No,
idea what's going on,
no, no, of course not. It's not a lived experience for him.
No.
No.
I had
Yeah.
to explain it. I had to explain a lot of things. And then, for eventually I just said, just you're gonna have to look into this yourself. Look up andropause.
Mm.
So he did. And then once he looked up andropause, you can't read about that without reading about menopause,
Yeah, great.
because they're
Yeah.
stuck together, right? They're
Hmm.
parallel experiences.
Yeah.
And then he started coming to me and saying, oh, you're having adrenal fatigue. That's why you're so
Yeah.
tired. Your
Yeah.
stress is too high. That's why you're running away and you want to sit in your room by yourself. You
Hmm.
know, I'm going to have to up my game. I'm going to have to up my game, is what he said,
Good.
to
Excellent
support you.
response. Good man.
Yeah. Because he's
Yeah.
always like, the mentality, or I'll describe it to him in terms of being on a team, right? So
Hmm.
if we're a team and one of your team members is injured,
Hmm.
it's not a break, it's more of a sprain, and you can't see it.
Mm.
But you have to compensate for that sprain so that they can heal.
Yeah.
And if you don't, they're going to get even more injured and more
Mm.
injured. And that helped him to understand, like, okay, so when you're saying you don't want to make dinner and you need help, you're not meaning I'm lazy today and I don't feel like doing it. You actually need help
Yeah.
because you're depleted. So
Mm.
I have to step in, or just order dinner.
Mm. Hmm.
But if I, like you said, right, if I wasn't taking that ownership,
Mm.
this is how I feel, this is what I need, this is what I would like. And then being very, very clear. I have a lot of, that comes up a lot, where people are like, well, how do you get what you want for your husband? I tell him point blank, I want this, I want that.
Hmm.
Because he needs that kind of direction. He's not like super tuned in. It's not that he doesn't care, he does really care.
Mm.
But those things, like I would say, like that anticipatory side, where I was trained to be that way as a girl and as a mom, he was not.
Yeah.
So that's not his fault. It's not his problem. But if I want to get what I want, I need to make it really, really clear. And so that's what I do. So do you have any final thoughts about things that you would say? And how can people find you? And obviously you're on Facebook and you're a member of our group. So if there's questions, you
Yes.
can ask in the group. And
Yes.
I think people are really embarrassed in some ways to ask these kind of questions, but
Yeah. Yeah. So have you tagged me in this so people can click on the name and check me out on Facebook, or I'll make a comment
Yeah,
underneath.
make a comment, and
People can find me.
you're in the group, so I'll definitely,
Yeah.
when I
So
will
people can
put the
find me that
video
way.
from the page into the group so everybody in the group can
Right.
see it
And
there,
maybe
and then
just
they can
like
comment in the
tag me
group
in the
because
comment.
yeah,
Yeah,
they don't
that'd be
mind
great.
doing that so much. And they
Because
keep
I
it anonymous.
agree. No, yeah, I agree with you, Jessica. Like, this is an area that women don't want to necessarily speak about or don't want to make a comment in a group, especially on Facebook, if they're worried that it's suddenly going to show up on their feed and that people outside of the group are going to see it, and because glitches happen and stuff like that. So first thing I would say, just in terms of finding me, find me through Facebook. I've got a link in bio. You can check me out that way with my website. And also you're very welcome. If anybody just wants to chat, you can message me on Messenger, and we can have a very private, confidential chat. I don't ever share about what's shared with me. Um, and I think just the final thoughts on this in terms of yeah, in terms of this life stage and in terms of these bodies, is just to say, I've taken a strong stand for sovereignty and for like ownership of these bodies and for um, choosing the next 50 years and how we want to be in these bodies. Um, my final thoughts are like full compassion for us all as we navigate this part of our lives, because we're coming up to something where we have almost no role models. We have almost no expressions of anybody older than us doing it healthily. There are a couple, but there's not very many, and we have to really seek them out. We are coming up against a lifetime of being told who we are and what our bodies are and how we're supposed to feel and what we're supposed to think. And all of a sudden, if we do want to like choose something different for this time of life, or if this time of life is really difficult and we're struggling, absolute full compassion for us to take the little steps and to get it wrong and to be completely confused and to be overwhelmed and like the emotions that can come with it and all of it, because it's really not easy to be a woman at any state at life stage a lot of the time. For some it is, but for a lot it isn't. And this life stage doesn't necessarily make it any easier. And if we choose to step into it, um, if we choose ourselves, actually, there is the potential for deliciousness that's waiting for us all. And I want this world to be full of delicious older women so that the next generation who comes has the role models that we don't have. And that's what I'm taking a stand for as well.
Yeah, and I agree with that completely. I mean, there's a um in the yogic tradition, there's a prophecy that the gurus that sent their disciples to the West to
Mm-hmm.
spread yoga,
Mm-hmm.
they're they left the tradition behind of only teaching men,
Mm-hmm.
and they started teaching women, because the
Mm-hmm.
prophecy is women are going to change the world.
Mm-hmm.
Women and children are going to create a completely different world, and part of it has to do with yoga. And the reason that they're bringing yoga to us is because it was dying in India,
Mm-hmm.
because it was stuck in this patriarchal tradition. Whereas we took just the physical practice and threw the meditation and the spiritual stuff out.
Yeah.
But if you keep doing the physical practice for a while, eventually things sort of catch up and you're like, oh, you know what? There is a lot more, and you learn more and more and more. And then you get into all this other things about yoga. So I see that that's part of what's happening, is that
Mm-hmm.
women are looking around and going, you know what was good enough for my grandmother, putting up with whatever, right? Situation with being married and being unable to get out of that marriage if it wasn't a good one. That's not good enough. It's not good enough for me. I'm not going to do that. I'm gonna figure out what I need to do. And it happens sometimes in perimenopause and menopause, where women will just be like, that's it, I'm done.
Mm-hmm.
And I really admire women that are that determined to completely change their lives. I decided, even though part of me did want to leave at a certain point with my husband, because it's hard to stay, and it's hard to keep communicating, and it's hard to feel like you're not understood, and to be, trying to battle a patriarchal idea that even though he's lovely and very open-minded, he has that. That's where he was raised,
Mm-hmm.
Catholic, right? And the fight of my life and the quality of my life and what I want to do and the purpose that I feel that I have is very, I want to have a purpose-driven life. That's really important to me, that I'm not just haphazardly happening to do things. And
Mm.
helping other women has always been really important to me. And so, I mean, I didn't really start this group that I started with the idea that it was going to become this big thing. I started it because I felt crazy and alone. My girlfriends didn't really want to talk about it. I figured there must be some people that I know that did. And we
Mm-hmm.
ended up just inviting people that we knew or that we thought might possibly want to talk about it, and ended up with 100 people really quickly and had a really nice little support group. And then the question became, do we open it up to people that we don't know? And I was willing to put up with the occasional, like sometimes people are mean to me. Sometimes people say horrible things, or, I
Yep.
try and help them and they're really unkind in return. Um, but I have this vision of helping women, like that woman that's sitting alone in the car right now crying because she just went to see the doctor because
Mm.
she had painful sex and was told to go home and just put up with it. And she feels crazy, that she would see this video and realize she is not crazy.
No.
The doctor has failed her because their training is patriarchal and misinformed or uninformed or not current.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a lot of things that she can do. Unfortunately, you have to come from this broken place where you feel really beaten down and somehow find that courage. So I often will say to women, what would you do if it was your daughter? If your
Mm.
daughter called you and said, I'm in pain and I saw the doctor and the doctor told me to put up with it, would you be like, okay, Crystal, you'll just put, no, you wouldn't. You would be
Mm.
dragging her here. You would be making a million phone calls. You would find someone
Mm.
who would help your daughter and you
Yeah.
would take her somewhere else. You wouldn't
Yeah.
just put up with that because that's not right. So you do it for yourself now. Now you're your own mother, and you learn how to go and get those resources because they are there.
Mm.
Apparently there's a bunch of pelvic floor physiotherapists in my city. I had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
I was just lucky that the physio that I was seeing when we were talking about perimenopause, she said, oh, and I do pelvic floor. So if you ever have a problem, just let me
Mm.
know. And then I did have a problem and I was immediately in to see her and it was solved within like 2 sessions.
Great. Yeah.
Whereas, how many years would you just put up with that otherwise until did you know that it's like first or second reason women get put into long-term care is incontinence?
Mm. Yeah.
And that's a treatable condition
Mm-hmm.
if you go get treatment. So anyway, I don't want to go too far over time, and I just want to make sure to honor you and thank you for working with women and helping in this area, because it's been really good for me to know you and to
Mm-hmm.
keep that on my radar, that
Yeah.
it's not about expectations or rebelling or authority. It's about enjoying my life,
Yes.
and having pleasure is part of the whole. I mean, like, why else would we decide to get into these human bodies anyway? It's certainly probably not for the pain.
Oh.
Or maybe
Yeah.
it is. I don't know. We don't know.
Yeah.
We thank you so much, and we'll chat about stuff in the group, and
Yeah.
hopefully
Please.
get more good talks
Tag me
happening.
in the comments of this when you post it so I know where it is. And then if anybody has any questions or thoughts, I'm happy to come into the group as well and we can have a chat there for sure.
Awesome. Awesome.
Mhm.
Okay. So this is Naomi, and we are talking about our own pleasure and keeping it alive during peri and postmenopause. And thank you so
Absolutely.
much. I'm going to end the call now, which will hang up on you abruptly, but I'm still here. You can message me if you need to, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks so
Oh,
much,
and
Jessica.
by the way, I think I love you already. Like, I mean, where are you now? Are you in Switzerland?
I'm in Switzerland, but I'm based in the Netherlands and I work online as well, so
Yeah,
everybody knows. I'm in
yeah,
Europe and I work online.
yeah. And I'm
Yeah.
I'm in Canada, right? So I mean,
Yep.
we've never met, but I feel
No,
I feel like
across the oceans.
we're
Yeah.
doing like a soul sister work here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Awesome.
Yes.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Jessica. Beautiful to chat.
See you later.
Bye.